I slammed the car door shut, my heels clicking against the pavement as I marched toward our suburban home. The setting sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawn, but the beauty was lost on me. My mind raced, replaying the conversation I'd overheard at work. "Did you hear about Anthony?" whispered Jessica from accounting. "Apparently he's been seen around town with some young blonde." I'd brushed it off then, but doubt gnawed at me now. Anthony and I had always been different. Me, the career-driven powerhouse. Him, the supportive homebody. It worked for us, or so I thought. As I reached for my keys, the front door swung open. There stood Anthony, his salt and pepper hair tousled, wearing that goofy, kiss-the-cook apron I'd bought him years ago. "Kate, you're home early," he said, surprise evident in his voice. I was just about to start dinner. I pushed past him, tossing my briefcase onto the entryway table. "We need to talk, Anthony." He followed me into the kitchen, concern etching his features. "What's wrong, honey? Rough day at work?" I spun to face him, my eyes narrowing. "Where were you last Tuesday evening?" Anthony's brow furrowed. "Tuesday, I was at the gym, I think." "Why?" "The gym," I repeated, my voice flat. "Funny, because Jessica from accounting saw you at Rosario's, with a blonde." His face paled, and for a moment I saw guilt flash in his eyes before he composed himself. "Kate, it's not what you think. That was Beth from my book club. We grabbed a quick bite after the meeting ran late." I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to, but something didn't sit right. "Book club? Since when are you in a book club?" Anthony sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I joined a few months ago. I thought it might give us something to talk about besides your work." The words stung, but I pushed the hurt aside. "And you didn't think to mention this?" "Honestly, I didn't think you'd care," he said softly. We stood there, the silence stretching between us like a chasm. I was about to press further when my phone buzzed, a text from my boss. "Big news. Call me ASAP." I glanced at Anthony, torn between my suspicions and my career. "This isn't over," I said, grabbing my phone and heading to the study. 10 minutes later, I emerged, my head spinning. A promotion. A big one. But it came with a catch, a 2-year assignment in Chicago. I found Anthony in the living room, pretending to read a book. "That was work," I said, perching on the arm of the sofa. "They've offered me a promotion." His eyes lit up. "Kate, that's fantastic. I'm so proud of you." For a moment, I saw the man I fell in love with, supportive, kind, always in my corner. But then I remembered the blonde, the lies, and my heart hardened. "It's in Chicago," I said, watching his reaction carefully. "For 2 years. Anthony's smile faltered. "Oh, I see." "I haven't accepted yet," I added quickly. "I wanted to discuss it with you first." He nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the carpet. "It's a great opportunity, Kate. You should take it." His easy acquiescence surprised me. Shouldn't he fight for us? Ask me to stay? Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Anthony jumped up. "I'll get it," he said, relief evident in his voice. I heard muffled voices at the door, then Anthony called out, "Kate, there's someone here to see you." Curious, I made my way to the entryway. There, holding a thick manila envelope, stood a man in a crisp suit. "Catherine Lawson?" he asked. I nodded, a sense of dread washing over me. "This is for you," he said, handing me the envelope. "You've been served." As the man turned and left, I stared at the envelope in my hands, my world tilting on its axis. What fresh hell was this? I looked up at Anthony, his face a mask of confusion and concern. In that moment, I knew our comfortable life was about to be shattered. The only question was, how many pieces would be left when the dust settled? I stared at the pregnancy test, the 2 pink lines mocking me. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not when everything was falling apart. The manila envelope from last night lay unopened on the bathroom counter. I didn't need to look inside to know what it contained. Divorce papers. Anthony's ultimate betrayal. A knock on the door startled me. "Kate, are you okay in there?" Anthony's voice, laced with concern, made my stomach churn. I shoved the test into my pocket and opened the door. "I'm fine," I lied, brushing past him. He caught my arm gently. "Kate, we need to talk about last night, about the papers." I yanked my arm away. "There's nothing to talk about. You want a divorce? Fine, but don't expect me to make it easy for you." Anthony's face crumpled. "It's not what you think. I didn't file for divorce. Those papers, they're from my mother." I froze, confusion replacing anger. "Your mother? What are you talking about?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Remember that letter you found last month? The one hinting at some family secret?" I nodded, recalling the cryptic message that had set my suspicions in motion. Well, those papers explain everything. My mother, she's not who I thought she was, and neither am I. Before he could elaborate, my phone rang. It was my boss again. I have to take this, I said, grateful for the interruption. 10 minutes later, I emerged from the study, my mind reeling. The promotion was official, but the timeline had been moved up. They wanted me in Chicago by the end of the week. I found Anthony in the kitchen, the envelope's contents spread across the table. His eyes were red-rimmed, his face pale. "They want me in Chicago by Friday," I blurted out. He looked up, startled. "What? But that's so soon." "I know, but this opportunity, Anthony, it could change everything for us." He laughed bitterly. "Us? Kate, did you even look at these papers? My whole life is a lie. I don't even know who I am anymore." I felt a pang of guilt, but pushed it aside. "We can figure this out, together. Maybe this move is exactly what we need, a fresh start." Anthony shook his head. "You don't get it, do you? Your career has always come first, even now, when our marriage is falling apart, when my world is crumbling. All you can think about is your next big move." His words stung, but I couldn't deny the truth in them. "That's not fair. I've worked hard to get where I am. And I've worked hard to support you," he shot back. "But at what cost? We're strangers, Kate, living separate lives under the same roof." I opened my mouth to argue, but nausea hit me like a wave. I bolted for the bathroom, barely making it in time. As I retched into the toilet, I felt Anthony's presence behind me. "Kate, are you sick?" I wiped my mouth, avoiding his gaze. "I'm fine. Must be something I ate." But as I stood, the pregnancy test fell from my pocket. Anthony's eyes widened as he saw it. Are you?" I nodded, tears welling up. "I just found out this morning." For a moment, joy flickered across his face. Then reality set in. "The job in Chicago, what are you going to do?" The question hung between us, heavy with implications. I placed a hand on my stomach, torn between my career ambitions and the new life growing inside me. "I don't know," I whispered. "I honestly don't know." Anthony reached out, his hand hovering uncertainly. "Whatever you decide, I'm here for you, for both of you." His words should have comforted me. Instead, they filled me with dread. How could I trust him after everything? And how could I possibly choose between my dream job and this unexpected pregnancy? As we stood there, the bathroom suddenly feeling claustrophobic, I realized our comfortable life wasn't just shattered. It was obliterated, and the pieces left behind were sharper and more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. The Chicago skyline loomed before me as I stepped out of the taxi, my hand instinctively resting on my still flat stomach. 1 month into my new job, and I was already feeling the weight of my decision. "Miss Lawson?" A crisp voice cut through my thoughts. "I'm Amanda, your new assistant. Mr. Donovan is waiting for you in the conference room." I nodded, straightening my blazer. "Thank you, Amanda. Let's not keep him waiting." As we walked through the sleek office, I could feel eyes on me. Whispers followed in my wake. I'd heard the rumors, the ruthless corporate climber who'd left her husband behind for a promotion. If only they knew the whole story. Mr. Donovan, my new boss, greeted me with a shark-like smile. "Kate, just the woman I wanted to see. We've got a situation with the Hendricks account." I spent the next hour in a heated debate, defending our strategy. By the time I left the conference room, my head was pounding and my stomach was churning. "Are you all right, Miss Lawson?" Amanda asked, concern etching her features. I waved her off. "Just a bit of nausea. It'll pass." Back in my office, I collapsed into my chair, exhaustion washing over me. My phone buzzed, a message from Anthony. "Hope you're settling in well. We need to talk about the papers from my mother. Call me when you can." I sighed, guilt and frustration warring within me. I hadn't told him I was keeping the baby. I hadn't told anyone. A knock at my door startled me. "Come in," I called, quickly composing myself. A tall, handsome man entered, his smile warm but his eyes calculating. "Kate Lawson? I'm Jason Hendricks. I believe we have some business to discuss." My eyes widened. This was the CEO of Hendricks Corp., the account I'd just been arguing about. "Mr. Hendricks, what a surprise. Please have a seat." As we talked, I found myself drawn to Jason's charisma and quick wit. For the first time since arriving in Chicago, I felt a spark of excitement that had nothing to do with work. Our meeting ran late into the evening. As we wrapped up, Jason leaned in, his voice low. "You know, Kate, I have a feeling we could work well together. How about dinner tomorrow night? To discuss the account, of course. I hesitated, my hand unconsciously moving to my stomach. I'm not sure that's a good idea, Mr. Hendricks. His eyes followed my movement, understanding dawning on his face. Ah, I see. Congratulations are in order, then? I felt the blood drain from my face. How did you? Jason smiled kindly. I have 3 kids of my own. I recognize the signs. Don't worry, your secret's safe with me. As he left, I slumped in my chair, my mind reeling. How long could I keep this pregnancy hidden? And what would it mean for my career? My phone buzzed again, another message from Anthony. Kate, please call me. It's important. With shaking hands, I dialed his number. His voice when he answered was tense. Kate, thank God, I've been trying to reach you all day. What's wrong, Anthony? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. He took a deep breath. It's about the papers from my mother. I'm not who I thought I was. My father, he's not my biological father. I gasped, the implications hitting me like a freight train. What are you saying, Anthony? I'm saying, he replied, his voice breaking, that the man I thought was my father, he's actually my uncle, and the woman I've known as my aunt, she's my biological mother. The room spun around me as the weight of his words sank in. Just when I thought our lives couldn't get more complicated, this bombshell dropped. There's more, Anthony continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Kate, I think I might have a half-sister, and I think she might be in Chicago. As the words left his mouth, a knock at my office door made me jump. I looked up to see Amanda, her face pale. Ms. Lawson, there's someone here to see you. She says she's Anthony's sister. I stared at the woman sitting across from me, searching for any resemblance to Anthony. She introduced herself as Melissa, and the family resemblance was undeniable. The same warm brown eyes, the dimple in her left cheek when she smiled nervously. I'm sorry to barge in like this, Melissa said, fidgeting with her purse strap. I only found out about Anthony a few weeks ago. When I learned his wife was working here in Chicago, I couldn't resist the chance to meet you. My head spun. How did you find me? She looked sheepish. I may have done some light stalking on social media. I hope you don't mind. I forced a smile, my hand unconsciously moving to my stomach. It's a lot to take in. Melissa nodded, her eyes following my movement. Her gaze lingered on my midsection, and I saw a flicker of understanding cross her face. Before she could comment, my phone buzzed insistently. Excuse me, I said, glancing at the screen. It was Jason Hendricks. Again, I need to take this. Stepping out of my office, I answered the call. Mr. Hendricks, what can I do for you? Kate, I need you at the gala tonight. Jason's voice was urgent. The board members will all be there, and I want to introduce you as the brains behind our new strategy. I hesitated, glancing back at my office where Melissa waited. I'm not sure I can make it on such short notice. Kate, Jason's tone softened, this could make or break your career here. I need you by my side tonight. The weight of his words settled on me. This was the opportunity I'd been waiting for, the chance to solidify my position in the company. But as I ended the call, agreeing to attend, guilt gnawed at me. Returning to my office, I found Melissa examining a photo on my desk. Anthony and me on our wedding day. He looks so happy, she murmured, then turned to me with a sad smile. I'm sorry, I shouldn't pry. This must be overwhelming for you. I nodded, sinking into my chair. It's been a challenging few months. Melissa leaned forward, her eyes kind. Kate, I hope my presence doesn't complicate things further. I wanted to know my brother and his family. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Family. The baby I was carrying, Anthony's child, would be her niece or nephew. A secret I was still keeping from everyone, including Anthony. I appreciate that, Melissa, I said, my voice strained. But I'm afraid I have a work engagement tonight. Perhaps we could continue this conversation another time? As I ushered her out, promising to be in touch, my phone buzzed again. A text from Anthony. Haven't heard from you, everything okay? Miss you. I stared at the message, guilt and longing warring within me. When was the last time we'd really talked? The distance between us seemed to grow with each passing day. Hours later, I stood before the mirror in my hotel room, smoothing down my gown. The fabric clung to my body, and I realized with a start that a small bump was beginning to show. Panic rose in my throat. How long could I keep this secret? As I entered the gala, Jason immediately appeared at my side, his hand on the small of my back, guiding me towards a group of stern-looking men in expensive suits. "Gentlemen," Jason announced, his voice proud, "I'd like you to meet Kate Lawson, the woman who's going to revolutionize our approach to the Hendricks account." I plastered on my most confident smile, pushing thoughts of Anthony, Melissa, and the baby to the back of my mind. This was my moment, the culmination of years of hard work and sacrifice. But as I shook hands and made small talk, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slipping away. Something far more precious than any career advancement. My phone vibrated in my clutch. Another message from Anthony. "Kate, we really need to talk. It's important. Please call me." In that moment, surrounded by the glittering elite of Chicago's business world, I realized I was standing at a crossroads. The path I chose tonight would change everything. My career, my marriage, my future. The question was, which path would I take? The taxi pulled up to our house, and I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with my pregnancy. After weeks of dodging Anthony's calls and ignoring my doctor's warnings about stress, I was finally home, but it didn't feel like home anymore. I paid the driver and dragged my suitcase up the familiar path. The garden Anthony had lovingly tended was overgrown, weeds choking out the flowers we'd planted together. A bad omen if I ever saw one. My key turned in the lock, and I stepped into the silent house. "Anthony?" I called out, my voice echoing in the emptiness. No response. I made my way upstairs, my hand unconsciously resting on my now visible baby bump. The bedroom door was ajar, and I pushed it open, freezing at the sight before me. The room was a mess, clothes strewn about, drawers left open. And there, on Anthony's nightstand, was a framed photo I'd never seen before. A blonde woman, laughing as she embraced my husband. My legs gave out, and I sank onto the bed, clutching the photo. This couldn't be happening, not after everything we'd been through. The sound of a car pulling up jolted me back to reality. Voices drifted up from outside Anthony's, and a woman's laughter I didn't recognize. I crept to the window, peering out from behind the curtain. There he was, helping a stunning blonde out of his car. They were laden with grocery bags, laughing and talking like a couple. My world tilted on its axis. I stumbled back, knocking over a lamp. The crash echoed through the house. "Hello?" Anthony's voice called from downstairs. "Is someone there?" Footsteps on the stairs. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The bedroom door swung open, and there he stood. Anthony's eyes widened in shock. "Kate, what are you doing here?" Before I could answer, the blonde appeared behind him. "Anthony, who is it?" "Oh." She stopped short, her eyes darting between us. "Bethany," Anthony said, his voice strained. "This is Kate, my wife." The silence that followed was deafening. Bethany's face drained of color. "Wife? You're married?" I found my voice, cold and sharp as ice. "Yes, he is, though apparently that means little to him these days." Anthony stepped forward, his hands raised placatingly. "Kate, it's not what you think. I can explain." "Explain?" I spat, fury rising in me. "Explain how you're living with another woman while I've been working my ass off in Chicago? Explain how you've been ignoring my calls, making me worry sick?" Bethany backed away, her eyes wide with horror. "I had no idea. He told me he was divorced. I'm so sorry. Get out," I hissed, my gaze never leaving Anthony's face. "Both of you. Get out of my house." Anthony's face crumpled. "Kate, please, let me explain. There's so much you don't know." "Like what?" I shouted, tears streaming down my face. "Like how you've been lying to me? To her? What else don't I know, Anthony?" In my rage, I forgot myself. My hand, which had been protectively covering my stomach, fell away. Anthony's eyes dropped to my midsection, and I saw the exact moment realization dawned on him. "Kate," he whispered, all color draining from his face. Are you pregnant?" The room spun around me. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. This wasn't how he was supposed to find out. Bethany gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God," she murmured, backing out of the room. I stood there, trembling, as the full weight of the situation crashed down on me. My marriage was in shambles, my husband was a liar, and I was carrying a child into this mess. Anthony took a step towards me, his hand outstretched. "Kate, don't," I said, my voice break. "Just don't." I pushed past him, nearly running down the stairs and out of the house. The fresh air hit me like a slap, and I gulped it down, trying to clear my head. As I stood on the lawn, my world crumbling around me, I realized I had a choice to make. I could stay and fight for a marriage that might already be beyond saving, or I could walk away and forge a new path for myself and my unborn child. The decision loomed before me, as daunting as it was inevitable. Whatever I chose, there would be no going back. I stood in the kitchen, my hands gripping the counter so tightly my knuckles turned white. Anthony paced behind me, his footsteps echoing in the tense silence. "Kate, please," he pleaded. "Just let me explain." I whirled around, anger bubbling up inside me. "Explain what, Anthony? How you've been living with another woman while I've been busting my ass in Chicago? How you've been lying to me for months?" He flinched at my words. "It's not like that. Bethany, she's just a friend. She needed a place to stay, and—" "A friend?" I scoffed. "Is that why you were holding her in that photo? Why you've been ignoring my calls?" Anthony's face crumpled. "I was lonely, Kate. You were gone, and I felt lost." His words hit me like a physical blow. "And I wasn't. You think it was easy for me, being away from you, dealing with this pregnancy alone?" Silence fell between us, heavy and oppressive. Anthony's eyes were fixed on my swollen belly, a mix of emotions playing across his face. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered. I laughed bitterly. "When, Anthony? Between your ignored calls and vague text messages? Or maybe I should have mentioned it while you were busy playing house with Bethany." He stepped towards me, his hand outstretched. "Kate, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I felt like I was losing you to your career." I backed away, my heart pounding. "So you decided to replace me?" "No," he exclaimed. "It wasn't like that. I was confused and Bethany was there and—" "Stop," I cut him off. "I don't want to hear it. You made your choice, Anthony." Just then my phone buzzed. It was Jason Hendricks. I answered, desperate for a distraction. "Kate," Jason's voice was urgent. "Where are you? The board meeting starts in an hour and we need you here." I closed my eyes, torn between my crumbling personal life and my career. I'm not sure I can make it, Jason." "Kate," he said, his voice softening. "I know things are complicated right now, but this meeting could make or break our entire strategy. I need you." I looked at Anthony, who was watching me intently. In that moment, I made my decision. "I'll be there," I told Jason, ending the call. Anthony's face fell. "You're leaving? Now?" I moved past him, grabbing my purse. "What did you expect, Anthony? That I'd just forgive and forget? That we'd play happy families after what you've done?" He grabbed my arm, his eyes pleading. "Kate, please, don't go. We need to talk about this, about the baby." I yanked my arm away. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine." As I reached for the door, it swung open. Bethany stood there, her eyes red-rimmed. "Kate," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Anthony told me you were divorced, that—" "Save it," I snapped. "I don't want to hear it from either of you." I pushed past her, my heart racing. As I climbed into my car, I could see Anthony and Bethany in the doorway, both looking lost and confused. Tears blurred my vision as I drove, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. How had everything fallen apart so quickly? How could I trust Anthony again, after this betrayal? As I pulled into the office parking lot, my phone buzzed again. A text from Melissa, Anthony's newly discovered half-sister. "Kate, we need to talk. It's about Anthony and Bethany. There's something you need to know." My hand shook as I read the message. What more could there possibly be? How many more secrets and lies could I uncover? I sat in my car, one hand on my belly, the other clutching my phone. In a matter of hours, my entire world had been turned upside down. My marriage was in shambles, my career hanging by a thread, and now this cryptic message from Melissa. As I stared at the office building looming before me, I realized I was standing at a crossroads. Whatever decision I made next would change the course of my life forever. The question was, did I have the strength to face what lay ahead? I sat across from Melissa in a quiet cafe, my hands wrapped around a cup of herbal tea. The aroma did little to calm my churning stomach. "Kate, I'm so sorry about everything," Melissa began, her eyes filled with genuine concern. "I had no idea things would unravel like this when I reached out to you." I nodded, too exhausted to speak. The past few days had been a whirlwind of emotions and revelations. Melissa leaned forward, her voice low. "There's something you need to know about Bethany. She's not just some random woman Anthony met. She's the daughter of Robert Hendricks." The name hit me like a thunderbolt. Robert Hendricks, Anthony's boss and the CEO of the company he worked for. The same company that was now my biggest client in Chicago. "What?" I whispered, my mind reeling. How do you know this?" Melissa sighed. "I did some digging after I met you. I wanted to understand my newfound family better. It turns out Bethany has been working for her father's company, trying to prove herself. She was assigned to work closely with Anthony on a project." The pieces started falling into place. The late-night calls Anthony claimed were work-related, the sudden business trips, the growing distance between us. It all made sense now. "Does Anthony know?" I asked, my voice barely audible. Melissa shook her head. "I don't think so. From what I've gathered, Bethany kept her connection to Robert Hendricks a secret. She wanted to succeed on her own merits." I laughed bitterly, and instead she ended up in bed with a married man. As the weight of this new information settled on me, my phone buzzed. It was Jason Hendricks, Robert's son and my direct contact at the company. "Kate, we need you in the office. Now. There's been a development with the merger, and we need your expertise." I ended the call, my mind racing. I had a choice to make: confront Anthony and Bethany with this new information, or focus on my career and the crucial merger that hung in the balance. Melissa reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Kate, what are you going to do?" I stood up, a plan forming in my mind. "I'm going to take control of this situation. All of it." An hour later, I walked into the Hendricks Corporation building, my head held high. As I entered the conference room, I saw Jason, Robert, and to my surprise, Bethany and Anthony. The tension in the room was palpable. Anthony's eyes widened when he saw me, a mix of guilt, confusion on his face. Bethany looked pale, her gaze darting between me and her father. Robert Hendricks stood, his face a mask of professional calm. "Ah, Kate, thank you for joining us. We were just discussing the merger and some personal matters that have come to light." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I'm aware of the situation, Mr. Hendricks, and I believe I have a solution that will benefit everyone involved." All eyes were on me as I laid out my proposal, a restructuring of the merger that would not only save both companies millions, but also ensure a clear separation between personal and professional relationships. As I spoke, I could see the admiration in Jason's eyes, the grudging respect in Robert's, and the dawning realization in Anthony and Bethany's. When I finished, silence filled the room. Robert was the first to speak. "Impressive, Mrs. Lawson, very impressive indeed. I believe we have a way forward." As the meeting adjourned, Anthony tried to approach me. "Kate, I held up a hand, stopping him. "Not now, Anthony. We'll talk later." I walked out of the conference room, my head spinning. I had just saved my career and exposed the truth about Anthony and Bethany's relationship. But at what cost? As I stood in the elevator, one hand resting on my growing belly, I realized that this was just the beginning. The real battle, for my marriage, my family, and my future, was yet to come. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped out into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. I was Kate Lawson, and I was done being a victim of circumstance. It was time to write my own story. I stood outside Anthony's office, my heart pounding. This was it, the moment of truth. I took a deep breath, smoothed my blazer over my now prominent baby bump, and pushed the door open. Anthony looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Kate, what are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Bethany walked in, her eyes widening as she saw me. "Oh, I didn't realize you had a meeting." I smiled, a calm settling over me. "I don't, but we all need to talk." Anthony stood, his face pale. "Kate, please, not here, not now." "Now is exactly the right time," I said, my voice steady. "Bethany, there's something you need to know, about Anthony, about me, and about your father." Bethany's brow furrowed. "My father? What does he have to do with this?" I took a step forward. "Everything. You see, Bethany, Anthony isn't just your coworker, he's my husband." The color drained from Bethany's face. She turned to Anthony, her voice barely a whisper. "Is this true?" Anthony nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Bethany. I never meant for things to go this far." Tears welled up in Bethany's eyes. "How could you? Both of you. Was this some kind of sick game?" I shook my head. "No, Bethany. I only found out recently about your connection to Robert Hendricks. Anthony didn't know either. We've all been pawns in a much bigger game." Just then, Robert Hendricks himself walked in, his face a mask of concern. "What's going on here?" "Bethany? Mrs. Lawson?" I turned to face him, my chin held high. "Mr. Hendricks, I think it's time we all laid our cards on the table. Your daughter and my husband have been having an affair that I believe you orchestrated to manipulate both our companies." Robert's face hardened. "That's a serious accusation, Mrs. Lawson. I suggest you think carefully before you continue." "Oh, I have," I replied, pulling out a file from my bag. "I've thought about it very carefully, and I have proof of your attempts to sabotage the merger, using your daughter and my husband as unwitting pawns." The room fell silent as I laid out the evidence: emails, financial records, and testimonies from other employees. With each revelation, I could see Robert's composure crumbling. Bethany turned to her father, her voice shaking. "Dad, is this true? Did you use me?" Robert's shoulders sagged. "Bethany, I only wanted what was best for the company, for our family. By destroying mine?" I interjected, my hand resting on my belly. Anthony's eyes widened as he finally registered my pregnancy. "Kate, you're—" I nodded. "Yes, Anthony, I'm pregnant. With your child. A child who deserves better than the lies and manipulation we've all been caught up in." The next few hours were a blur of confessions, tears, and hard truths. By the end of it, Robert Hendricks had resigned, Anthony had been dismissed, and Bethany had walked out, unable to face any of us. As I left the office building for the last time, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. I had faced my fears, stood up for myself, and come out stronger on the other side. 6 months later, I cradled my newborn daughter in my arms, gazing out at the Chicago skyline from my corner office. I had been promoted to vice president after exposing the corruption within Hendricks Corporation. It wasn't the life I had imagined, but it was one I had fought for and earned. Anthony and I had divorced, but we were working on building a new relationship as co-parents. Bethany had reached out, apologizing and asking for a fresh start, and Melissa, my unexpected ally through it all, had become a dear friend and my daughter's godmother. As I looked down at my sleeping child, I realized that sometimes life's greatest challenges lead to our most profound transformations. I had lost a husband, but gained a family. I had faced betrayal, but found my own strength. And in the end, I had achieved the balance I had always dreamed of: a fulfilling career and the joy of motherhood. I was Kate Lawson, single mother, corporate executive, and survivor. And this was just the beginning of our story.